deep in the heart of Central Texas, it's the Best of the Outdoors podcast. Brought to you by Texas Fish and Game Magazine, the voice of the Texas outdoor nation. I'm your host, Dustin Vaughn Warnke, author, outdoor writer, videographer, blogger, speaker, and podcaster. And I'm so excited that you took the opportunity to download our show today or stream it however you're listening and wherever you're listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited about today's show, as I am every show, because we always bring you some of the best information about Texas and even nationwide information about different things that affect us all in the outdoors, whether you're hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, whatever the case may be. So a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started with the show today. If you would please take the opportunity to rate the show and give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Podbean, FM Player, however you're hearing us and wherever you're hearing us from, whatever format you're hearing us from, especially iTunes, because that helps us get seen by more people and the show gets downloaded by more people. We get to help more people have fun in the outdoors. It's kind of a great thing. I just did a big blast on social media about the podcast, basically advertising that we're here and that we're not going anywhere, and we're also wanted to see if people would give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on wherever you hear us from. So especially iTunes, if you can do that, that would be great, and we would really appreciate you doing so. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the August issue of Texas Fish and Game, and I have Chester Moore with me again today as my guest, as I did in the last show. And we're going to talk in detail about things such as sharks, tarpon, and the Vibrio bacteria. And so those are just some of the different high points that we hit on in this show, and we have a lot of fun with this. I love doing this show just about more than I love doing anything, and I'm just so glad that you took the opportunity to download and listen to the show. So here is my interview with Chester Moore. Well, I'm joined on the phone today with Editor-in-Chief at Texas Fish and Game Magazine, Chester Moore. Chester, how you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm doing good. I am actually standing out in the great outdoors, wishing I was on the lake fishing, but talking in the great outdoors on Texas Fish and Game podcast, that's a pretty close second.
That's a pretty close second. You're still talking about the outdoors at least, right?
Doing good, and pretty excited about the August issue being out. We believe all of our issues are good, but I think this has got a lot of really interesting stuff in it for the people who are either listening or, checking out the digital version, or they're looking at the classic print edition. There's some pretty cool stuff in there,
Yeah, I think so too. The cover of it especially is pretty entertaining. The tarpon in Texas, which I thought was a pretty cool cover this year or this month.
Yeah, the peak tarpon time on the Texas coast is actually from about mid-July till about middle of September. So August falls right in the dead middle of that window. And there are productive tarpon fisheries, which a lot of people really don't think much about, in Port Mansfield, around the jetties in the nearshore Gulf, in Port O'Connor, Matagorda area, Port Aransas. I've actually casted tarpon down there at the Port Aransas jetties, and also between High Island and Galveston Island, where some of the biggest tarpon on the whole Gulf Coast live. We don't have as numerous of tarpon population as Florida, but we do have a fairly healthy tarpon population. So that story is basically about nearshore access to tarpon, and also nearshore access to some other jumpers, which are blacktip and spinner sharks. A lot of fun to catch, a lot of interest in that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how the average guy with maybe a John boat or a kayak or a small bay boat can get into some hardcore fishing action.
That's awesome. So when you say you've cast for tarpon, you're actually sight casting? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we were at the Port Aransas jetties. This was back in 2006. And Nicole McKibben, who worked for the magazine, was in the boat with us, and we were with Robert Shearer, who used to own American Rodsmiths. And we were fishing the jetties for trout, looking for trout. And I see these weird-looking fins. It's a long back fin of a tarpon coming out of the water. And I'm like, what in the world is that? And I realized, I saw a flash of silver. Oh, my, it's tarpon. So we passed for like 20 minutes at them. Would hit nothing. Nicole finally got one of them to hit on the top water, and it hit, and it jumped, and it tail walked for a second. It was gone.
Wow.
I've also had a tarpon on my line right out about 2 miles west of the Sabine jetties in the surf before in a boat. Got into a school of them, had one on my line for about 10 or 15 seconds. And so I'm a kind of sorry tarpon fisherman, but they're fascinating creatures, and it's something we're just trying to bring our readers and all of our listeners and everyone who engages Texas Fish and Game some information on how they can score on something that maybe they don't have to go take a trip to Florida to do.
Talk about a hard-fighting fish, right?
Yeah, I mean, a notoriously hard to hook fish. They're extremely bony mouths,
right.
And a lot of guys, when they pursue them with live or cut bait, use big circle hooks trying to hook that fish in the corner of the mouth so they don't get, they have a good shot at getting that fish and bringing it in. So notoriously hard to catch fish, called the Silver King, and plus the story we talk about, if you're tarpon fishing, you're going to encounter sharks, and, catching those big sharks on a fairly light tackle can be just as exciting. And, spinner sharks and black tips, of course, nearshore shark species, and even be caught in the bay systems, are awesome tail walkers and will put on some pretty acrobatic displays. I'll never forget being at a rig one time and seeing a seagrass sargassum, a whole probably mile-long stretch of it come in front of it were spinner sharks literally jumping out of the water, free jumping, spinning in the air up to about 8 or 10 feet in the air. It was just one of those incredible sights that just makes me marvel at God's creation, the opportunities that we have right here on the Texas Gulf Coast.
Oh, that's wonderful, man. I mean, what a story. What a sight to see. Yeah,
and there's another story in the mag that we're pretty excited about. It's called Encounter with the White Buffalo. And had an incredible opportunity to encounter a white buffalo doing one of our wild wishes when we were out at the Wild Ranch headquarters out in Kerrville area. But the story's not just about that. It's also about the history of the buffalo in Texas and how Texas Parks and Wildlife has a rare remnant of a specific genetic of buffalo in Caprock Canyons, and how a Texas rancher and hunter gathered remaining bison herd that was decimated by the war on the Indian tribes and all the market hunting that had happened, and to save the buffalo. So the story's, the white buffalo is the introduction, but the real heart of the story is how bison have come back even in the state of Texas. And it's a cool little story on that stuff,
That's awesome, man. What an awesome story.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was just one of those encounters because we had kids with us, and it was a dream come true for me. But also, I love the bison story. So we really like in our Texas Outdoor Nation section to engage things that are uniquely Texan. And this genetic of the state bison herd is a uniquely Texas genetic of the bison, and it's a uniquely Texan story because a Texan saved the bison in North America.
Absolutely, and I mean that's what better story than that? I mean that's great.
Yeah, conservation means wisely using our resources. It doesn't mean just decimating and wiping things out. It means harvesting, killing stuff at a level where you can sustain the herd. Renewable resources, like you plant a tree. You plant a tree, you can harvest that tree and take its seed and plant another tree. And so that's kind of what the renewable resources in both the hunting and fishing side of things. And that's why we've been successful in America. And that's why we haven't had any hunted species of game in the last 100 years go extinct. So it's because we are promoting sustainable resources,
And we've talked about this, you and I have before, even species like the axis deer, native to India, and the black buck native to India, the axis buck is native to India, isn't it? Am I right?
Yeah, India and Pakistan,
okay, India, Pakistan.
And black buck as well, yeah.
Black buck, I mean, they're larger populations in some degrees here in Texas than there are in their native homeland. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's true. You're talking about the number one prey item of tigers in India is the cheetal, which we call the axis deer.
Right.
And there are more here. There are more aoudad here in Texas than there are in northern Africa.
Yes, I was going to bring that up next.
Orites and the Dama gazelle would be extinct without the exotic hunting industry. And so there's a lot of great things to celebrate there. And, we had talked briefly about sharks a minute ago, but we're talking about sustainable things. We had an article in the July issue I want to touch on just for a second because of the newsworthy relevance of this about great whites in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
Our group called O-Search is actually tagging great whites in the Atlantic with satellite transmitters and finding out that some of them are moving into the Gulf. And
wow.
Costa, the sunglass company, is doing a really cool project where they're producing certain merchandise that is benefiting that great white and that shark research by O-Search. Now, we'll probably have more information on that in the next podcast, but if you haven't checked it out, go to OCARCH.org, OCARCH.org, and learn about the amazing work being done, and Costa is a big part of supporting that, and the amazing work being done with great white sharks, and this is helping us find out about great whites right in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right in our backyard.
Yeah, literally. So it's a cool thing, and I've been writing about great whites in the Gulf for 11 years. I just saw my first article I wrote about them. People said I was crazy. Now we know I'm not. Oh, I might be a little bit crazy, but I'm completely. But as scary as the great white is to people, a much, much bigger, and to me, far scarier threat is something called Vibrio.
Yes, and you talk about this
Vibrio,
on your radio show, right? The Vibrio virus.
Yeah, I'm More Outdoors. I've addressed this. I've written articles in the past, and Vibrio is also called flesh-eating bacteria. It can enter you through a wound and can literally eat your flesh away. It can kill you. It can be eaten like you eat raw oysters. You get it through eating raw oysters.
Wow.
And it's insidious because what happens is it builds up, and it's present all over the place. Highest concentrations are during warm and hot periods where you have higher salinity levels. So in the Gulf of Mexico, those areas along the beachfront. And
so, Chester, that's like right now, right? I mean, that's like a hot topic right now.
We're in like a peak period for this.
Sure.
And there have been a couple of Texans that we know have verified contracted this through open wounds this year, and it didn't turn out good. But be very cautious with your children swimming at the beach, wade fishing. It's not worth it if there's some kind of a wound you can contract Vibrio, because you can see a fin coming. You can't see the Vibrio enter. And
right.
It's a whole lot scarier than the very remote possibility of encountering with Jaws, So.
Wow. And so you're saying the best idea for, keeping from contracting this is to have some hand sanitizer on board with you to clean that wound if you get one, right?
Yeah, peroxide, hand sanitizer, something, alcohol, something to clean it out as soon as you get, if you cut yourself. And then if you have any extreme pain or start seeing any swelling or something, get immediately to a doctor.
Right.
I'm not a doctor. This is just stuff that I've talked to different experts that recommend. You can find different stuff online. But make sure, just use common sense. The main thing is avoiding a problem.
Right.
If you have an open cut, don't mess with it.
Right. Take precaution.
Yeah, you got to take precaution because the great outdoors is too fun to mess up. But these things, just be cautious. We want to give you the information, not only how to catch fish and shoot ducks and hunt deer and boat hunt and everything else. We want to also keep you safe out there in the great outdoors.
Oh, that's great, Chester. That's great. And I agree. That's been the whole goal of this podcast, is just to, make sure everybody has fun, stay safe. And as I end this podcast every time, I always say, have an awesome day in the outdoors. And that's kind of my sign-off line. And I mean, that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, is bring some highlights to what we do in hunting and fishing and those kind of things. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And there's just a lot of good stuff going on. Something I'm going to throw a shameless plug for in here.
Sure.
Is that we have a new video series debuted at fishgame.com this week, starring yours truly. It's called Department of Wild.
Yes.
And it is encounters with wildlife of Texas, from the Piney Woods to the Panhandle to the Gulf to the bays and the lakes, everywhere. And it's explaining the in-depth information on wildlife, from things like snake safety to things like this week's debut. We want to help you understand why you use a certain kind of lure, why you hunt on certain days. And this is called the gape width factor. Have you ever heard of the gape width factor, Dustin?
Until watching your video, no, sir, I have not.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the weird stuff that Chester dredges up.
Yeah, this is good.
Kind of my X-Files side of the hunting and fishing world, right?
I love it.
But what it is science say the gape width factor is how they determine how big of a prey a largemouth bass will eat. How wide their mouth is, gaping open, is the size prey that they will eat.
Right.
And what happens is, we'll have to let you watch the video. Make sure you go to fishgame.com, but we'll just give you this tip. If you use one of those 10-inch swim baits, right, you might think that's insane. Well, what you're doing is you're eliminating smaller bass from striking that.
Right.
Okay. And you're going to increase your chances of catching the bigger one if you eliminate the small one. And that's really the secret, if there's any kind of secret at all behind that. But the gape width factor determines some of the things that the bass will eat, and it gives a scientific explanation of why big, giant baits are sometimes necessary to produce the bass of a lifetime. So, and you have to watch the video to see my toads in the video. If you've never seen a 2-pound toad, and that's not
a huge toad. Yeah.
If you've never seen a 2-pound, literally 2-pound toad, go watch the video at fishgame.com. But a lot of good stuff going on, and the Texas Outdoor Nation is roaring into the late summer period where everything's happening from tarpon action to we're having dove season and teal season are coming up, and right after that the archery only season for whitetails, and a lot of cool stuff happening in the outdoors. And we're just honored to be able to bring us your podcast here. Has been a fun thing at the website, and to be able to bring the magazine every month.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, the one thing I wanted to mention on the Texas Outdoor Nation is that it's uniquely Texas. It's a new section of the magazine that started back in May. Is that right? The May issue?
Yeah, in the May. Yeah, in our 34th, I think it's our 32nd anniversary. Yeah.
Right, of publication. So that's a great thing. And I mean, I love it. I love to read it every month and flip to it and see what's in there, because we talk about things such as the YO Ranch or the, whatever's uniquely Texas, and some of the different things.
Yeah, we had a thing about alligators.
Yes.
And how people don't realize the size of that and some of the thing behind that. So it's trying to get people. This month there's one of the great Texas legendary outdoor writers, Steve Lamascus, on advanced reloading and some of the calibers that he's messed with on his various adventures in Texas. So it's very Texas flavored. We're either going to have some kind of a Texas writer that can only be born and live in the state of Texas writing it, or we're going to have something so uniquely Texas it's going to blow your mind. So
right.
God bless, and everybody out there, stay wild.
Well, as usual, that was another good interview, and I love having Chester on the podcast because he is just a ray of hope and light and sunshine and laughter and everything. He's our humble editor-in-chief with Texas Fish and Game, but is just a great guy, and I really love having him on the show, and love doing what we do on the podcast together. So, again, as I said earlier in the beginning of the show, please go and rate our show. If you like what you hear, feel free to email me through the website if you like what you hear, or if you have any questions or things you'd like for us to cover on the podcast in the future. That we've got a great staff of people here at Texas Fish and Game come up with something good. We're going to be broadcasting this show every other Thursday right now. Every 2 weeks, so bi-monthly, twice a month on Thursdays, just to give people an opportunity to prepare for the weekend and get ready for their hunting, fishing, outdoor camping, hiking, whatever kind of trip that they're taking, and just have some good information from this show to help them go out and do that, go out and do just that. So my thoughts again are stay healthy, definitely take the advice that we give you on the Vibrio bacteria, and the information that we give you on all the precautionary things to do. Take heed to that, and just go out there and have a great time in the outdoors. That's our whole humble approach with this podcast, is just getting out there and enjoying all that God's outdoors have to offer us. So thank you so much again for tuning in. Thank you so much for checking out the show. If it's your first time, thank you so much for hanging in with us, and have an awesome day in the outdoors.